Hi, my name is Ashton Bowen, and the idea that I'm going to be discussing today is the use of narratives in a persuasion context and how they can be effective in understanding a message of a persuasion tactic. So what a narrative is, essentially, it's a story that an audience becomes immersed in based on the plots and characters and the fact that it has a beginning, middle, and end. And at the end of it, they become so open to the story and immersed in it that they receive the underlying message that is within it. However, this can be a drawback as well because the audience becomes so immersed that they're distracted by the plot that the message is lost on them and they never receive what was intended to be received. So now that I've discussed the idea of a narrative, I'm going to apply this to a real life situation in the workplace. So I work at a daycare, and at the daycare, they implemented lockdown drills. And when they were implementing this and teaching us how to execute it, our director told us a narrative essentially about a person who came in impersonating a parent and was trying to take a kid that they were not authorized to take, and the teachers did allow them to take them. However, once the directors noticed this, they put a stop to it immediately and executed a lockdown drill, and they were able to stop the person from taking a kid. So in this case, I'm going to make some inferences about it now that I've told you the situation. We were able to change our attitudes and influence and made us take this situation a lot more seriously because we heard this narrative and we were able to see the risks and consequences of this situation. And had we not been told this narrative, it might have just been seen as another lockdown drill, as it is at school, although it is a serious situation because there's a real life context behind it based on the narrative. Although it may not have been true, it did show a real life situation and context that it could be used towards. So now that I've made some inferences, I'm going to apply this to another real life situation, which could be considered personal life, but it is revolving around the political climate that we live in today. So our current president recently made a visit to San Antonio, where we live, and he created this narrative from his visit based on essentially one person's idea of what the climate is in San Antonio, about border control, that most San Antonio residents don't want to come out at night because they're scared, at least without a weapon or someone else with a weapon. And as a San Antonio resident, I've never seen this narrative in action, and so this shows the harmful and negative effects of a narrative and how it can negatively influence people, because it is essentially a false narrative because it's based on one person's idea and situation, and although it may be true for that one person, it's not necessarily true for the entire social reality and what actually the situation is. And so now that I've discussed this, in conclusion, I've discussed the positive attributes that a narrative can have, because a person becomes so immersed in the plot that they are able to receive the message and understand it because they're so immersed in it. And another attribute is the fact that we're so often exposed to narratives in books and movies and TV shows that we are more susceptible to perceiving these messages because we're so often exposed to them. And then on the other hand, there are also negative attributes to this because it does create a false narrative, essentially, when the narrative is based on one person's experience versus statistics, which are more often used in persuasion contexts, which gather data from multiple people that come together to create a more accurate representation of what the real life situation actually is, versus the narrative, which can be based on one person's experience and spread as if it's the truth of reality. So